They thought it would be funny. That was how it started. Noah Reed was 30 years old and lived on the edge of a mid-sized American city in a small rented house that always smelled faintly of motor oil and his mother's lavender tea. By day, he worked as a mechanic at a neighborhood garage, the kind of place where people still paid in cash and knew each other's birthdays. By night, he went home, reheated leftovers, and helped his mother ease her aching hands into warm water. He didn't go out much. He didn't own anything you'd call dress clothes. Dating apps sounded like another language, and romance was something other people talked about while he stayed late to finish a brake job for a single mom who needed her car for the night shift. What he did, over and over, was simple. If someone needed help, he showed up. He never made a speech about it and never expected anyone to notice. The young guys from the office down the street did notice, but not in the way that mattered. They stopped by the garage on their lunch breaks, sleeves rolled, ties loose, phones in hand. They said they liked Noah, but it was the kind of liking that kept a little distance, the way you like a harmless character in a sitcom. They laughed at his faded work shirts, his old sneakers, his habit of packing the same turkey sandwich every day. He probably thinks a romantic night out is changing oil together. One of them snickered once, and the others burst into easy laughter. Then, one afternoon, someone had an idea that made them laugh even harder. "Let's set him up on a blind date," one of them said. "Yeah, somewhere expensive. Get a woman way out of his league and see how long he lasts before she bolts." So they made it official, on paper at least. A fake workplace initiative, something like Employee Appreciation Blind Date. They came to Noah with shining eyes and dramatic voices and told him he'd been nominated by a secret admirer. The prize? Dinner at one of the fanciest restaurants in town and a chance to meet someone special. Noah didn't know what to do with that. No one had ever called him a prize. No one had ever hinted that there might be a secret admirer anywhere in his life. Confused, he wiped his hands on a rag and asked if they were serious. They nodded, they swore, they pushed the papers in front of him. That night, he told his mother. She sat at the small kitchen table, a knit shawl over her shoulders, veins standing out in her hands as she cupped her mug. When he said someone had picked him, her eyes softened. She reached across the table and squeezed his fingers. "Maybe it's time you let someone else see what I see," she murmured. "You never know, honey. Not everyone is looking for shiny things." He smiled shyly, parts of him wanting to believe her, part of him already bracing for disappointment the way you brace for a cold wind. But he agreed to go. On Saturday, he woke earlier than usual. For once, he wasn't thinking about engines or worn-out belts. He ironed his best white shirt, still bearing a faint stain on the sleeve from fixing a neighbor's kid's bike last fall. His khaki pants fit snugly but looked clean. His sneakers were old, but he scrubbed them until the laces looked almost new. He studied himself in the mirror. He didn't look like the men on magazine covers. There were faint lines at the corners of his eyes from squinting under hoods, a hint of exhaustion that never really left. But there was also something quietly steady in his gaze, the kind of steadiness that comes from holding other people's problems in your hands and trying to make them safer. He gave himself the smallest nod, the kind a man gives when he knows he's done all he can. Then he drove across town to the restaurant he'd only seen from a distance. A place with chandeliers glowing behind tall windows and a name in cursive letters he was afraid to mispronounce. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, soft music, people moving like they'd grown up knowing how to belong there. Noah swallowed, gave his name at the host stand, and followed the waiter to a small table by the window. He sat, hands folded, menu open but unread. 10 minutes passed, then 15. His heart thudded quietly in his chest. He felt every thread of his shirt, every scuff on his shoes. And then she walked in. Tall, poised, wrapped in a designer dress and the kind of confidence money buys when it thinks it's earned everything. Her heels clicked softly on the floor as she approached his table. Her eyes skimmed him from head to toe, paused on the faint oil stain on his sleeve, then moved to his face. She didn't sit down. "I don't think you're the kind of man I was expecting," she said coolly, as if talking about a dish she'd decided not to order. Then she turned, her perfume trailing behind her as she walked away without another word. For a moment, everything went quiet. Noah stared at the empty chair. His shoulders sagged. His eyes fell to his hands, resting uselessly on the tablecloth. It lasted only a few seconds, 5 maybe, but time stretched, thick and heavy. like it often does when you're already used to being the one people leave behind. Then he drew in a breath, slowly, deliberately. He straightened his back, blinked once, and lifted his gaze to the window, to the city lights shimmering outside. A waiter approached, voice gentle. "Sir, would you still like to order?" Noah's throat felt tight, but he managed a small nod. "Yeah," he said softly. "I'll take the pepperoni pizza. Just for one." The waiter gave a sympathetic smile, then walked away. Noah leaned back and tried to let it roll off him the way he'd learned to do with careless comments and small cruelties. Maybe this was just the shape of his life. Quiet, unnoticed, the man who fixes everyone else's broken things while staying broken in ways no one bothers to see. Still, he whispered to himself, almost as a joke, "Guess it's dinner for one tonight." Outside, the city kept moving, unaware of the man sitting alone under the chandelier light. And Noah had no idea that something extraordinary was already making its way toward that very table. By the time his pizza arrived, the tight ache in Noah's chest had dulled into a familiar throb. He told himself it was just another evening, just another meal. He tried to focus on the warmth of melted cheese, on the comfort of a simple food he understood when the rest of the room felt like another planet. Voices swirled around him. Laughter, clinking glasses, quiet conversations about business deals and weekend plans. They rose and fell like waves on a shore he watched from a distance. He chewed slowly, eyes drifting to the window, following the slow crawl of headlights along the street outside. Then cutting through the soft murmur of the restaurant came a clear, small voice behind him. "Mommy, I like him. Can we sit with him?" Noah froze, unsure if he'd imagined it. He turned slightly in his seat. A few steps away stood a woman holding the hand of a little girl. The child couldn't have been more than 3. Soft brown curls, big, curious eyes, the kind of open face that hadn't yet learned how to hide what it felt. She was pointing directly at him. The woman at her side was beautiful in a quieter way than the one who had walked out. Her blonde hair fell in loose curls past her shoulders, and she wore a simple cream dress that didn't shout for attention. But what struck Noah most wasn't her clothes. It was her expression. There was grace there, yes, but also a tiredness that went deeper than lack of sleep. A heaviness at the edges of her eyes, as if she had spent years holding herself together in rooms where no one asked how she was really doing. Their eyes met. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by a quick flush of embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. She tends to say exactly what she's thinking. "I hope she didn't bother you." Noah straightened in his seat. He looked at the little girl again. She smiled at him like they were already friends, swaying slightly as she held her mother's hand. "No," he said, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "Not at all. It's nice." There was a brief silence. The woman glanced at the empty chair across from him, then back at his face. It was a simple table setting. One plate, one glass, one napkin folded beside his hand. Somehow, the sight seemed to land heavily in her chest. "If you don't mind," she asked quietly, "could we sit here for a bit?" Noah hesitated. Not because he didn't want them there, but because it was hard to believe someone like her would choose a table that held nothing but a half-eaten pizza and a man in an imperfect shirt. But he nodded. "Sure, please." Her smile appeared slowly, like something that hadn't been used in a while. She guided the little girl into the booth beside Noah and took the seat across from him. The child leaned forward immediately, elbows on the table. "I like your shirt," she announced. Noah blinked, then glanced down at the old button-up he'd tried so hard to make presentable. The faint oil stain on his sleeve seemed to glow under the restaurant lights. "Thanks," he said, chuckling softly. "It's been through a lot." "I'm Rosie," the girl declared, as if she were introducing herself on a stage. "This is Rosie," the woman echoed, gently smoothing her daughter's curls. "I'm Claire." "Noah," he replied, extending a hand across the table. Claire took it, her grip warm but careful, like she'd learned not to trust easily. For a moment, the three of them just existed there in a fragile kind of peace. A man who'd been humiliated as a joke, a woman who looked like she'd been hurt in quieter, more complicated ways, and a child who hadn't learned how to be anything but honest. Noah found himself talking more than he expected. Claire asked about the garage, and he told her, in simple words, about learning to fix engines as a teenager, about building his own workbench from scrap metal, about his mother who baked for the neighbors even when her joints hurt. "It sounds like you help a lot of people," Claire said softly. He shrugged. eyes dropping for a second. "I just do what I can. My mom always said if you know how to fix something and you don't help, you're wasting what you were given." Claire smiled, but there was a distance in her gaze, like part of her was standing somewhere far behind her own eyes. When he gently asked what she did or what brought her here tonight, she nudged the conversation back toward Rosie. "Rosie keeps me busy," she said with a small laugh. "She's 3, but she already thinks she runs the world." Noah looked at the girl, who was now carefully arranging sugar packets into perfect rows. "She's smart," he said, "and brave." Claire's hand resting near her daughter's shifted slightly, fingers brushing over Rosie's knuckles as if anchoring herself. "She's everything," she murmured. There was a silence filled with things she didn't say. Late nights, headlines, judgments from people who never once asked what it cost her to survive. Noah didn't push. He knew you didn't yank on threads that were holding someone together. Rosie, oblivious to the undercurrents, had already decided he was hers. She giggled at the grease under his fingernails, asked if he fixed rocket ships, and clapped every time he made a face using the crust of his pizza. And somewhere between her questions and Claire's quiet smiles, the restaurant began to feel less like a stage where he didn't belong and more like a small island of warmth carved out of a cold night. Noah didn't know it yet, but this unexpected moment, a child's simple "I like him," a tired woman choosing to sit with a stranger, was the first loose thread in a life he thought was already sewn shut. He had no idea how much everything was about to change. The evening might have passed quietly after that. 3 people sharing pizza and small talk, then going their separate ways, each returning to their own quiet loneliness. It almost did. Rosie was in the middle of asking if Noah fixed rocket ships and dragon cars when a sharp, panicked sound tore through the restaurant. A choked gasp, a chair scraping back hard, a woman's voice cracking with fear. Noah turned. At a nearby table, a little boy, maybe 4 or 5, was clutching his throat. His face was turning red, then a worrying shade of purple. His mother stood up so fast her chair toppled, hands hovering helplessly. The father reached for the child, then froze, panic taking over reason. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Noah was already moving. The same instinct that made him stop for broken-down cars on the side of the road pulled him to his feet before his mind had fully caught up. He stepped around Claire and Rosie with a quiet, "Excuse me," and crossed the distance in a few long strides. He placed a steady hand on the father's shoulder. "It's okay," Noah said, voice calm but firm. "I've got him." He moved behind the boy, positioning his hands the way he'd been taught years ago at a free first aid workshop at the community center. Arms around the child's torso, fist under the ribcage, sharp upward thrusts. 1, 2, 3. On the third, the boy jerked, coughed, and a piece of food flew from his mouth onto the table. Air rushed back into his lungs with a ragged cry. His mother collapsed into a hug around him, sobbing with relief, whispering thank you over and over. For a moment, the entire restaurant exhaled. A few people clapped, others just watched, stunned. Noah stepped back, awkwardly brushing his hands on his shirt as if he'd only changed a tire. He gave the family a small nod, then turned and walked back to his table as if nothing remarkable had happened. Claire was staring at him, not with shock exactly, but with a deep, assessing kind of wonder. "You just knew what to do," she said quietly when he sat down. He shrugged, eyes dropping for a second before returning to hers. "I took some training at the community center a while back. Figured it might be useful one day." "Most people would have frozen," she said. There was no flattery in her tone, only truth. "You didn't even hesitate." "I just didn't want the worst thing to happen in front of his parents," Noah replied softly. "If I can stop something from breaking, I try." Rosie, half aware of what had happened, clapped her hands anyway. "Yay! Rocket ship fixer saves the day." Noah laughed, a little embarrassed, but the sound loosened something tight in Claire's chest. She leaned forward slightly, eyes never leaving his face. "I don't know many people like you," she murmured. He didn't have an answer for that. So he just smiled, a small, unsure curve of his mouth that said more than words. "I'm just trying to be decent in a world that forgets what that looks like." For someone watching this late at night, feeling invisible and tired, it might have been the first moment they recognized a quiet kind of courage that doesn't ask to be seen, only to be useful. Claire couldn't stop thinking about him. Hours later, the soft hum of the city glowed beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of her apartment. Rosie had fallen asleep quickly. her tiny body curled around a stuffed animal, breathing slow and even. The luxury condo was silent, the kind of silence that makes your thoughts loud. Claire sat by the window with a cup of tea growing cold between her hands. The skyline glittered, all glass and ambition. Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass, perfect hair, careful makeup mostly washed away, the fine lines at the corners of her eyes more visible in the low light. She was Claire Weston, only daughter of Victor Weston, CEO of Weston Motors. People knew the company name long before they ever bothered to ask how she was doing. She'd grown up in a world where calendars were full and hearts were empty. Tutors, piano lessons, charity galas, expectations that towered higher than any building she could see from her window. Mistakes were unacceptable. Feelings were inconvenient. When she married young, it wasn't just for love, though she had hoped for that too. It was a way out. A chance to be seen as herself, not as a surname on the side of a building. But the man she chose had loved the access more than the woman. The marriage cracked quickly. The divorce came with headlines, judgmental whispers, and a new label she hadn't asked for. The CEO's reckless daughter, now a single mom. They never printed the quiet nights she spent walking the floors with a crying baby, or the way her chest clenched every time she thought she'd failed her child. Since then, she had built walls, polished, composed, unshakable. She learned to survive inside them, to smile in boardrooms, to show up at family dinners and speak carefully rehearsed lines. And then a mechanic with rough hands and gentle eyes had saved a child's life in front of her and gone back to his seat like it was nothing. A few days later, life reminded her how fragile control really was. On the way to Rosie's preschool, warning lights flickered across the dashboard of her SUV. The engine sputtered, then died in the middle of a busy street. Horns blared behind her, angry and impatient. Her pulse spiked. "Rosie, sweetheart, stay buckled, okay?" she said, forcing her voice to sound calm. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers, mind racing through tow trucks and angry drivers, and her father's voice telling her she should have chosen a better vehicle. Before she could make the call, an old pickup truck pulled in behind her, hazard lights blinking. The driver's door opened, and there he was. Noah stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag, the same steady presence she remembered. "Need a hand?" he asked, a small smile on his lips. Relief washed through her so hard her knees almost gave out. "You again," she breathed. "I'm starting to think your car just likes my company," he joked gently. Before Claire could respond, the back door flew open and Rosie tumbled out, barreling toward him. "Grease superhero," she squealed, wrapping her arms around his legs. He laughed, hugging her back without hesitation. "Hey, my favorite sidekick." Claire watched, stunned. "She never does that," she murmured, almost to herself. "Not even with family." "Kids know," Noah said simply, meeting her gaze for a moment that felt longer than it was. He popped the hood, checked a few connections, then found the culprit. A loose sensor cable. Within minutes, he had it secured and the engine humming again. "All set," he said, closing the hood. "You should be okay now." Claire reached for her wallet, instinctively reaching for the safest language she knew. Payment, transaction, control. "At least let me..." He shook his head, stopping her with a small wave. "No, I'm just glad I was nearby." Rosie, eyes bright, dug into her little backpack with great seriousness. She pulled out a sticker sheet, peeled off a shiny gold star, and pressed it carefully over Noah's shirt pocket. "This is your hope star," she announced. "You're a good person. Good people should always have hope." Noah froze for half a second, then knelt until he was eye level with her. "Thank you, Rosie," he said softly. "That means more than you know." Claire turned away under the excuse of adjusting her bag, swallowing against the sudden sting in her eyes. It had been a long time since anyone treated her child like a gift instead of an inconvenience, or a prop in someone else's story. As Noah drove off in his old truck, she stood on the sidewalk with Rosie's small hand in hers, watching him disappear into traffic. For the first time in a long while, something unfamiliar and terrifying rose quietly in her chest. With him, she realized, she didn't feel judged. She didn't feel inspected. She felt safe. And for someone lying awake at night, heart racing over every mistake and every what if, the idea that safety could arrive in an old pickup truck wearing a faintly stained shirt and a gold star sticker might feel like the first real hope in a long while. Rumors have a way of circling back, especially in neighborhoods where everyone shares the same streets, the same coffee shops, the same tired bus stops. Around the corner from Noah's garage, the office guys liked to talk, and people listened. It didn't take long for them to notice that the blind date hadn't gone the way they expected. They'd hoped for a story to laugh about. Maybe Noah showing up in his work boots, maybe getting kicked out of the restaurant. What they didn't expect was for him to simply keep going. If anything, he seemed a little quieter, but also strangely lighter, as if something had shifted the night he shared pizza with a woman and her little girl. They saw the way a sleek SUV sometimes pulled into the lot now. They saw a tiny figure jump out of the back seat and sprint toward him like he was the best part of her day. One afternoon, as Noah was finishing an oil change, he heard his name drift over from the sidewalk. "You know that whole blind date thing was a prank, right?" One of the office guys said loudly, just enough for others to hear. "We talked that first woman into showing up, taking one look at him, and walking out. He actually believed the whole secret admirer thing." There was laughter, a harsh, thoughtless kind. Another voice chimed in. "Can't believe he fell for it. Guy's too nice for his own good." Noah paused, wrench in hand, under the raised hood of a car. He didn't look up. He just closed his eyes for a moment and let the words sink in like cold rain. He'd suspected something deep down. Part of him had always waited for the punchline. Hearing it confirmed didn't surprise him as much as it should have. It just hurt in a small, familiar way. He exhaled slowly. No shouting, no confrontation. Just a quiet breath, as if he were letting out the last bit of air from a tire that had already gone flat. Then he reached up, tightened the bolts he'd been working on, and moved to the next task. He'd long ago learned that not everyone understood kindness. Some people only recognized it as weakness, something to play with. What still caught him off guard wasn't cruelty. It was the rare moments when someone chose to stay. That evening, just as he flipped off the lights and stepped outside to lock up, he heard the soft hum of an engine he recognized now. Claire's SUV pulled into the lot. She stepped out first, her blonde hair catching the low sun. Rosie scrambled out of the back seat and ran full speed toward him. "Grease superhero," she cried, throwing her arms around his legs. "I missed you." Noah laughed, scooping her up with an ease that seemed completely natural now. "City's been way too quiet without my sidekick," he said. Claire approached, holding 2 lemonades and a small smoothie. "Rosie insisted we stop by," she said, smiling. "She thinks it's important to check on her superhero." "I'm glad you did," Noah answered, and he meant it more than he could say. They sat on the old bench outside the garage as the evening cooled around them. Rosie leaned comfortably against Noah's shoulder, sipping her smoothie and humming some half-made-up tune. Claire handed him a lemonade, and they talked about nothing and everything. Summer heat, old cars, the way Rosie had started naming every pigeon she saw. At one point, Rosie pulled out her sticker sheet again and marched over to Noah's tool chest. With great seriousness, she pressed another glittering star onto the metal. "A second star," she announced. "One for today's hope." Claire watched him closely. The way he listened when she spoke. The way he never rushed Rosie, never brushed her off. She noticed a shadow behind his smile, a tiredness that wasn't just about long hours. But she didn't ask. She just stayed, and sometimes presence is the answer to questions we're too afraid to put into words. As the sun dipped low, they rose to leave. Noah walked them to the SUV. He crouched by the back tire and frowned. "This one's a little low," he said. Before Claire could respond, he grabbed his air compressor and topped it off. "You always do that?" she asked, half amused. "Old habit," he replied. "Makes me feel better knowing you two are safe out there." In the golden light, it almost looked like a painting. Noah wiping grease from his hands, Rosie sitting in the open doorway swinging her legs, Claire watching them with one hand shading her eyes. Out of nowhere, Rosie looked up at him and said, "You're a good person. Mommy says good people should get good things." Claire flushed. "Rosie," but Noah just smiled, his voice soft. "Careful, kiddo, you're gonna spoil me." For a moment, the world went still. No titles, no money, no difference in worlds. Just a man, a woman, and a child united by something simple and rare, ease. Later that night, as Claire drove home with Rosie asleep in the back seat and Noah turned off the garage lights, they both found themselves smiling at nothing in particular. Maybe, they each thought in their own way, this is how something good begins. Good things have a way of making some people nervous, especially people who are used to controlling outcomes. Word of Claire Weston visiting a modest auto garage more than once didn't stay small for long. It drifted from the office guys who hung around on their lunch breaks to people who knew someone at Weston Motors, and from there, eventually, to the top floor. Victor Weston was not a man who missed details. He knew numbers, market trends, board votes, and, most of all, anything that might affect the family name. When whispers started about his daughter being seen at a rundown garage with a mechanic in stained shirts, he didn't shrug it off. He investigated. A few phone calls were all it took. A name, Noah Reed. A job, local mechanic. A simple life that Victor judged before he even finished hearing it. So one afternoon, while Noah lay on a creeper beneath an aging sedan, radio humming quietly in the background, a sleek black car rolled into the lot. He didn't notice until a pair of polished shoes appeared beside the tires he was tightening. Noah slid out from under the car, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked up and froze. The man before him was tall, composed, dressed in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than the car Noah was working on. Silver hair, sharp eyes, an expression that had seen deals won and people dismissed without a second thought. "You're Noah Reed?" the man asked, his tone making it sound less like a question and more like a confirmation of a file. "Yes, sir," Noah answered cautiously. "I'm Victor Weston," he said, "Claire's father." Something tightened in Noah's chest, but he kept his face calm. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Weston." Victor glanced around the garage, the chipped paint, scattered tools, stains on the concrete. "This is where you work?" he asked, even though he already knew. "It is," Noah said simply. "I'll be direct," Victor continued. "I don't like surprises, and I know men like you. You see someone like my daughter and think, here's my way up." Noah let the words hang between them. He could have defended himself with anger, with sarcasm, with wounded pride. Instead, he chose honesty. "I never tried to use her for anything," he said quietly. "We met by chance. Everything since then just happened. I haven't asked her for a thing," he dapped him. Victor stepped closer, voice cool. Savvy men never ask out loud. They just linger. They let themselves look indispensable. "With respect," Noah replied, meeting his gaze, "Claire chooses for herself. I don't control her, and I don't want to." Victor's jaw tightened. His eyes swept over the grease on Noah's hands, the worn workbench, the gold star sticker glinting on the toolbox. "Walk away," he said finally. "Whatever this is, end it. My daughter has been through enough." Noah's fingers curled around the rag in his hand. Part of him wanted to say that Claire had every right to decide what enough looked like. Another part of him understood the quiet terror behind a father's control, fear dressed up as authority. "I'm not chasing her, sir," he said. "I'm just here when she shows up." Victor gave the garage one last look, full of quiet disdain, then turned sharply and walked back to his car. The engine purred, then faded down the street, leaving Noah alone in the settling dust. That evening, Claire arrived at her father's penthouse for what he'd called a simple family dinner. The table was set perfectly. The city glowed through the glass. The air was tight with something unsaid. He waited until the plates were served before speaking. "I visited him today," Victor said without looking up. Her fork paused midway to her mouth. "Noah? He's a mechanic, Claire," Victor said. "Bye. He works in a place that leaks oil. Is that the life you want?" She set her fork down carefully. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. "It's not about what he does." "You're my daughter," he replied, voice firm. "You deserve someone with status, someone strong, not a man who spends his life under cars." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from years of swallowing back her own truth. "I deserve someone who respects me, who makes me feel safe, someone who sees me, not just Weston Motors on my back." "And you think he doesn't see your name first?" Victor asked, finally looking at her. "You're being naive." "No," she said, eyes burning. "You're afraid. Afraid I'll choose someone you can't manage. Someone who makes me happy in ways money never has." Victor stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. "I am protecting you." She rose too, meeting him eye to eye. "No, you're protecting an image." Silence filled the dining room, heavy and sharp. At last, Claire picked up her purse. "I'm not walking away from him," she said quietly. "And you don't get to decide what kind of life is worthy of me." She walked out, the door closing with a firm, echoing click. Somewhere across the city, Noah worked late into the night, replaying his conversation with Victor in his mind. He wasn't surprised by the judgment. He'd lived under it for years. What he hadn't expected was that Claire, who'd had every reason to choose the safety of approval, would choose instead to stand where it hurt. For anyone listening in the dark, wondering if they are enough for the people they care about, that choice might whisper something softly brave. Being loved for who you are will always be worth more than being accepted for who you pretend to be. A few days later, the city felt softer than it had in weeks. Claire took Rosie to a small park not far from their apartment, a place where the noise of traffic faded into birdsong and children's laughter. Trees lined the paths, their leaves whispering in the warm breeze. Parents sat on benches with coffee cups, strollers lined the walking path, and somewhere a dog barked at nothing in particular. Claire walked slowly, fingers wrapped around Rosie's small hand. For the first time since the argument with her father, her chest felt a little less tight. Rosie skipped every few steps, pointing out every dog, flower, and cloud as if the world had been made just for her to discover. They were rounding a curve near the playground when Claire spotted a familiar figure a short distance ahead. A woman struggled beside a toppled stroller, trying to calm a crying toddler whose world had just flipped sideways. The stroller's front wheel was bent sharply inward, and there, crouched beside them with a toolbox at his side, was Noah. He spoke to the woman in that same calm voice Claire knew so well now, reassuring her while his hands worked quickly and precisely. He straightened the wheel, adjusted the axle, tightened bolts with an ease that came from years of fixing things other people wanted to throw away. Rosie gasped, "Mommy, it's him!" Before Claire could respond, Rosie dropped her hand and ran across the grass, arms wide open. "Grease superhero," she called. Noah looked up, surprise flickering across his face, then broke into a grin just as Rosie barreled into him. "Hey, sidekick," he laughed. "You found my secret park." Rosie nodded, completely pleased with herself. "I came to play, but now it's better because you're here." Claire reached them a moment later, her steps slowing as she watched him hand the stroller back to the grateful mother, who thanked him again and again. He responded with a small shrug, like it was nothing. It struck Claire suddenly how natural it all seemed. This man who kept appearing wherever someone needed help, as if kindness were his default setting. Rosie, in her usual unfiltered way, turned to her mother and blurted, "I like him. You like him too, Mommy?" Color rose in Claire's cheeks. She glanced at Noah, who rubbed the back of his neck, smiling awkwardly. "I guess that's out in the open now," he said with a soft chuckle. Claire looked at her daughter, then at him. The words came out quieter than she intended, but they were honest. She's not wrong. For a second, the park fell away. It was just the three of them in the afternoon light. No rumors, no penthouses, no oil stains or company logos. Just truth, spoken by a child who hadn't learned how to be afraid of it yet. What they didn't see, at least not then, was the man standing under the shade of a broad tree across the lawn, watching. Victor Weston stood with his arms crossed, expression unreadable. He had followed them that day, not to confront, but to understand. He watched Rosie fling herself at Noah without a hint of fear. He saw Noah kneel to retie her shoelace, gently brushing dirt from her knee. And he saw something he hadn't seen in years. His daughter truly smiling. Something in him shifted almost against his will. Victor stayed beneath the tree for a long time, unseen. He watched Claire walk beside Noah while Rosie skipped between them, holding both their hands. They looked, in that unguarded moment, almost like a family that had always been meant to find each other. He didn't call out. He didn't interrupt. He simply watched as they drifted toward the playground, Rosie tugging Noah toward the swings. Victor had built an empire on control, controlling markets, narratives, outcomes. But nothing in his life had prepared him for the helplessness of seeing his daughter happy with someone he'd already judged and rejected. Yet as he watched Noah wipe grass off Rosie's shoes and listen intently to her story about a cloud that looked like a dragon, Victor realized something important. This man hadn't taken anything from Claire. He had given something back, something Victor had been unable to provide, a sense of peace. For the next few days, Victor wrestled with that image. He thought about his own fears, about watching his daughter suffer through a failed marriage, about the headlines, the whispered gossip, the way she had shrunk into herself afterward. He told himself he wanted to protect her, but deep down, he also knew there was pride mixed in with his love. Pride and image and the stubborn belief that safety only lived inside the life he had planned for her. A few mornings later, Noah was adjusting a timing belt on an old pickup when a shadow fell across the garage floor. He looked up and saw Victor again, but this time the older man wasn't wearing a suit. Just a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms, no tie. His posture was still stiff, but something in his eyes had changed. "Mr. Weston," Noah said, standing and wiping his hands. Victor looked around the garage. The same chipped paint, the same scattered tools, the same gold star sticker glittering on the toolbox. But he didn't sneer this time. He let out a slow breath, as if releasing something he'd been holding for years. "I misjudged you," he said. Noah blinked, thrown by the simplicity of it. "Sir? I thought I was protecting my daughter," Victor continued. "But the truth is, I was just afraid. Afraid she'd get hurt again. Afraid she'd choose someone who couldn't carry her world with her." He paused, eyes steady. "But I watched you with her, with Rosie. You're not trying to take anything from them. You're simply showing up." Noah swallowed, unsure what to say. "I care about them," he replied quietly. "A lot." "I can see that," Victor said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded brochure, placing it on the workbench between them. Weston Motors is launching a new initiative, Community Care Auto. Free basic car maintenance for nurses, teachers, custodians, delivery drivers, the people who keep everything running and rarely get thanked. He nodded toward the flyer. "We need someone who actually knows this work and knows how to talk to people with respect. I think that's you." Noah stared at the paper, stunned. "You want me involved?" "I want you leading it," Victor said. "You'd run the program, oversee the team, help design what it looks like. We'll provide the resources. You bring the heart." Noah felt the ground shift beneath him. For a man who had always been told he was just a mechanic, just a worker, the offer felt unbelievable. He nodded slowly, voice rough with emotion he tried to hide. "Thank you, I won't waste it." For anyone lying awake at night, feeling stuck in a life that the world labels small, this moment matters. Because sometimes, without warning, the same world that overlooked you can be forced to admit it was wrong and ask you to lead. The launch event for Community Care Auto took place at a downtown community center a few weeks later. The building's multi-purpose room had been transformed with banners, folding chairs, and a temporary stage. A large sign hung behind the podium. Community Care Auto, powered by Weston Motors. Local journalists milled around with cameras. City officials shook hands. And families in modest clothes sat clutching informational flyers about free oil changes and safety checks. It wasn't glamorous. It was real. Noah stood near the side of the stage, tugging at the collar of his cleanest shirt. It was still a bit wrinkled, but it was the best he had. He'd spent his whole career under cars, not under lights. The attention felt like a shirt 2 sizes too big. He looked down at his hands, still bearing faint traces of grease despite his best efforts. For a moment, doubt whispered in his ear, "You don't belong up there. That stage is for people with titles, suits, degrees." Then he felt a small hand slip into his. "There he is!" Rosie's voice rang out, bright as ever. She bounded up the steps as if she owned the place, flinging her arms around him. "That's my favorite person," she announced loudly to anyone within earshot. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Claire followed more slowly, wearing a soft blue dress that brought warmth to her eyes. She looked at Noah like she saw every version of him, the anxious man by the stage, the mechanic in the oil-stained shirt, the stranger sitting alone at a fancy restaurant, and chose all of them. She took Rosie's hand with one of her own, then reached for Noah's with the other. Her grip was steady, grounding. "Thank you," she whispered, leaning closer, "for stepping into our lives when we didn't even know we needed someone." Noah's throat tightened. "I think I needed you more than you needed me," he said quietly. When Victor stepped up to the podium to begin the event, his voice carried the same authority it always had, but there was a softness threaded through it now. He spoke about giving back, about seeing the people whose work often goes invisible. "And this initiative," he said, glancing toward Noah, "would not exist without one man who reminded me that dignity doesn't come from titles, but from how you treat people." He gestured for Noah to join him on stage. The room applauded. Noah's heart pounded, but he walked forward, Rosie squeezing his fingers before letting go to sit with Claire in the front row. As Noah took the microphone, he could feel every tired night, every dismissive comment, every lonely dinner pressing up against this moment. "I'm not used to speeches," he began, a small, nervous smile appearing. A few people chuckled. "I'm more comfortable under a car than under a spotlight." He glanced at Claire and Rosie, then at the faces in front of him. The nurse with the worn-out shoes, the delivery driver with tired eyes, the teacher clutching a reusable coffee cup. "But I know what it feels like," he continued, "to keep things running while nobody sees you. I've watched people choose between fixing their car and buying groceries. This program, it's a start. It says, we see you, you matter, your safety matters. And if I can help even a few people feel less alone, then this is worth everything. He stepped back, overwhelmed by the applause that followed. For once, it didn't feel like the world was laughing at him. It felt like they were letting him in. As the event wound down and the sun slipped lower outside the tall windows, the crowd slowly dispersed. Families signed up for appointments. Volunteers stacked chairs and reporters packed away their cameras. Rosie tugged on Noah's sleeve. "Do we get pizza now?" she whispered, as if it were the most important part of the day. Noah laughed, looking down at her earnest little face. "Always," he said. Claire joined them, threading her arm through his. Victor stood a few steps away, watching them with an expression that was still learning how to soften. When Noah caught his eye, Victor gave a small nod, not the stiff acknowledgement of a CEO, but the quiet respect of a man who had finally decided to trust. Outside, the air was cool and gentle. They walked along the sidewalk together, Noah in the middle, Claire on one side, Rosie skipping on the other, each of them holding one of his hands. To anyone passing by, they might have looked like any ordinary family heading out for a simple dinner, but they knew better. They knew what it had taken to get here. A cruel prank, an empty chair in a fancy restaurant, a 3-year-old's unfiltered affection, a broken-down car in the middle of traffic, a father's fear slowly turning into acceptance. At the little pizza place they chose, not the elegant restaurant from that first painful night, but a warm corner shop that smelled like dough and tomato sauce and second chances, Rosie swung her legs under the table and declared, "This is my favorite day." "Why's that?" Noah asked. "Because you're here," she said, as if it were obvious. "And Mommy's smiling, and we're all eating pizza together. That means everything is good." Claire reached across the table and took Noah's hand. Her fingers were still, but her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "She's not wrong," she said softly. For anyone listening to this story in the quiet hours, eyes heavy but heart restless, it's worth remembering. Love doesn't always arrive wearing perfection. Sometimes it smells like motor oil and cheap coffee. Sometimes it carries gold star stickers on a wrinkled shirt. Sometimes it shows up when you're sitting alone, convinced you were the punchline. Noah's quiet strength, Claire's courage to choose a different kind of life, and Rosie's innocent belief that good people should always have hope are not just details in someone else's story. They're reminders that kindness still matters, that being seen for who you are is worth more than any title, that second chances can walk in through unexpected doors, or sit down at your lonely table and say, "We'd like to join you, if you don't mind." If this story has warmed even a small corner of your heart, hold on to that warmth tonight. Let it sit with you in the dark. Let it remind you that you are not invisible, that your efforts matter, that somewhere out there, good things may already be on their way toward you, quietly, steadily, just like Noah did.